In an urban India that thrives on the footsteps of millions of people, there exists a floating and invisible class of urban poor, living in slums, earning through informality, and forced, pushed, snubbed to maintain pin-drop silence about the lack of basic services they are entitled to. Of the 93 million slum residents in India, 81% lack access to sanitation. 15% have no access to any kinds of toilet, leaving them no option but to defecate in the open. Living in poor housing, stuffed in shanty lanes like a shameful secret, they are perpetually vulnerable to diseases that stem from unsanitary water consumption, poor hygiene, and other environmental factors that make Indian slums the antithesis of sustainability, a nightmare from which to wake seems impossible. Priya's interventions into slums of secondary Indian cities found such deficits. Deficits caused by decades of negligence. Negligence of policies, programs, institutions, and a blind eye to the suffering of the urban poor by all of us. Access to water is one of the biggest problems as it is often scarce and contaminated. Women and children have to often walk for miles to get water. In the absence of accessibility, water is stored in slum houses and is susceptible to flies and mosquitoes carrying bacteria which leads to dengue, malaria, and other diseases. Imagine the reality of a community you belong to as a perpetual health crisis, minimal health care, lack of ventilation, toilets and water. Imagine your community plagued with diarrhea, water diseases, parasitic worms, infestations, and fecal oral diseases which affect children the most, causing high infant mortality. Imagine your children walking in streets that are swept once in a blue moon, their feet running through toilet waste, flowing into the open street due to improper water outlets in most homes. The fact is that majority of us privileged Indians choose to oversee this reality every single day.
एक तो पानी की परेशानी है और रोड की बहुत परेशानी है, बहुत उबड़-खुबड़ गला है, कोई रोड बिल्कुल भी कौन है और पानी बिल्कुल भी कौन। पानी में बहुत परेशान पाँव टेट नीचे ले रहा हूँ। एक लेटरिन बाथरूम कौन टेट नीचे जाना पड़े 2-3 घंटा लगे।
यहाँ पे लेटरिन बाथरूम की प्रॉब्लम है, हमें बाहर जाना पड़ता है। मैं यहाँ की बहू हूँ, यहाँ पे कोई बाहर का बस्ती का देखा तो कितना बुरा लगता है। और हमारे बच्चे भी है जो यहाँ अनशन जगह करते हैं लेटरिन तो उनको बीमारी हो जाती है और उनको रोज कभी ना कभी अस्पताल लेके जाना पड़ता है। वहाँ पे पैसे वहाँ पे लगाओ।
हमारे कचरा डिगला कर देते हैं, मच्छर हो जाते हैं, बच्चों को खा जाते हैं तो डेंगू बुखार आ जाती है। बहुत परेशानी है, सूल डालते हैं, लेटरिन कर देते हैं, बदबू आती है, खाना ही नहीं खा सकते हम।
When your reality is uncertain and vulnerable, long term is luxury and short term is now. For these slum dwellers, daily survival is the only goal and very little attention is paid to the outer world. Their rights and entitlements are vague shambles they don't know the structures of. More than anything, Priya's involvement in Indian slums reflected the sheer loss of hope that its dwellers have in terms of having any influence on their governance. Despite being direct stakeholders, they accept their voices and votes as invisible, illiterate, and irrelevant. Engaged Citizens Responsive City, or ECRC, an initiative by Priya, came as a rebuttal, an engagement to counter the lack of people's voices in one of the largest democracies in the world. Especially focusing on the urban poor, ECRC is an attempt to bridge the gap between silence and negligence, between people and their representatives, between participation and isolation. Come join us and help us spread knowledge, rights, and democracy. Engaged citizens are the future of our cities.